Hey, this is Surfline Director of Forecasting Kevin Wallis, and in this week's Pacific edition of Forerunners, the Surfline podcast dedicated to helping you score waves, we'll delve into the active patterns in both the North and South Pacific and what that means for surf. While we think there's great info throughout this pod, for those of you who are a little impatient, want to jump straight into how the surf's going to be in your local region, whether that's Southern California, Northern California, or Hawaii, here's how things break down. And if you're not already a premium member, go to surfline.com/Forerunners podcast for a free 15-day trial of Surfline Premium. At the top of the pod, lead forecaster Schaler is going to jump in and discuss the best days of surf in Southern California and the dynamic pattern we find ourselves in. Starting around 16:10, forecaster Keaton is going to join us to give us the best days of surf over the next week in the Bay Area, Santa Cruz, and the Central Coast. Just after the 26:25 mark, lead forecaster Jonathan Warren's going to call in, and we're going to discuss what should be a solid next few days of waves on the northern shores. Might have gone a little bit long on that, but some great info there. And then starting at 45:20, John and I are going to break down the swell that recently propelled restaurants on Tabarua into the good to epic sphere. Once again, I'm Surfline Director of Forecasting Kevin Wallis, and you're listening to Forerunners, which drops weekly with the Pacific edition on Tuesday and the Atlantic version on Wednesday. Here we go.
Okay, this is Sean Collins, Chief Forecaster of Surfline, and this is, the first order of business, looking down on the Southern Hemisphere, what to expect over the next 2 weeks.
At any given moment, a perfect wave is breaking somewhere on this earth. For the surfer, the trick has always been knowing where and when to find it.
Schaler Perry has joined us now. He is our primary Southern California forecaster. You can follow him on his Twitter and Instagram handles at sperry.com. Let me give that again. At sperry.com.
At sperry Surfline.
Jeez. I'm like 0 for 3 right now. I was about to say Schaler. Maybe I throw in Schaler. Okay, we're going to try it again.
Shay, Chonga Bonga.
Twitter and Instagram handles at sperry Surfline. You will post little tidbits about Southern California surf quite a bit. And as our primary Southern California forecaster, we've got a pretty dynamic situation with an area of low pressure offshore right now. It looks like it's going to kind of meander around for the next couple of days. Actually, things have shifted around a bit, which is going to be interesting for a wind and precipitation forecast. So how's your stress level about now?
Oh, it's doing pretty good. Yeah,
You're a pro, man. You've been through this before.
This winter's been an interesting winter. We've had a very unusual storm track, to say the least, pretty much all winter long. And for this week specifically, we've really been eyeing this large scale pattern change along the West Coast for a few weeks now. We did that What the F February, I Thought We Were Friends article, and we're kind of teeing up this large scale pattern change where we're going to see an active storm track return along the West Coast, get some precipitation. And we're really full swing in the middle of it right now. We've had this area low pressure drop down off the West Coast over the weekend. A little tidbit there. We'll actually set up a little bit of westerly swell as we move into tomorrow, so something to keep an eye on there. Models weren't really picking that up, but now it's meandering off the coast. It's going to move in. Brought us some southerly wind swell that's on the rise today. Actually, decent size out front now. But as that just kind of hangs out, the low pressure at the surface is going to push through right now, bringing us the rain today. But the upper low hangs out offshore, kind of redevelops a little bit at the end of the week, and then pushes in on Friday. We have a slight break Saturday, and then it looks like Sunday into early next week, we got another series of storms dropping down along the West Coast. So it's been active, and we're going to get some snow in the Sierras. We got rain in the local mountains today.
All right. So here's the $1 million question, man. And I'm sure you get asked this all the time. Where are you surfing in the next few days? What I know you it's probably going to have to be in Orange County. If you have
to ask, you probably can't afford it.
I know it's got to be in Orange County.
Yeah,
you're dad, but
I'm a dad. I got another kid coming in hot.
Anytime. Did you check your phone? Actually, you got it on vibrate right now.
Next couple of weeks here, just going for number 2. But yeah, the best place to surf really the next few days, at least through the end of the work week, is going to be summer focal points tomorrow.
And summer focal points meaning
areas that pull in southerly swell.
Okay.
So southern Ventura through western North LA, Orange County, a couple spots in San Diego. we're going to have long period new south ground swell filling in. So long period south swell from that southern hemisphere storm that we were talking about last week. That's going to be building in tomorrow. We're going to still have some southerly wind swell in the mix. We're going to have that little bit of westerly swell. So shape should still be at least somewhat broken up for the beach breaks. Conditions look to improve to an extent. So it doesn't look like ruler edge perfection by any means, but could be kind of fun. We'll see that south swell pick up a little further, top out the back half of the week. Winds do still look pretty favorable for Thursday morning, although the last couple runs of the models have made things look at least a little bit dicey for places like San Diego. From Orange County north up in to LA, Ventura, and even Santa Barbara, winds look pretty favorable on Thursday. But as we move into Friday, the low moves in, winds start to really look dicey again. I think there could be some opportunities around, especially for areas that can handle a southerly or southeast wind. But it doesn't look quite as favorable as the next couple of days. So next few days, I'm trying to surf. I'm heading to a summer focal point, heading somewhere that likes a mix of swells. And another thing to keep in mind is we had that big high tide, mid trending late morning as we move through the end of the week. So we'll have a morning tide push, but a lot of areas are going to slow down as we move through the mornings.
What is high tides we're like 5-6 feet in the morning? Oh, I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah.
So let me pivot. Okay, this is a good time for a shameless plug. With this kind of dynamic situation in place with Southern California, there naturally are probably going to be some adjustments to the forecast over the next couple of days. So we encourage everyone to check out those premium forecasts for, whether it's South Orange County, North Orange County, whatever area you may be in. And if you're not already a premium member, you can go to surfline.com/Forerunners podcast. Get a free 15-day trial there and just check out the products we have on offer, and hope you're stoked. Back to you.
Yeah, no, 5.5, 6 foot high tides today, tomorrow. We're actually going to be trending to a lot low, like not as major of tide swings as we move through the next few days. So it will be an issue, but not as much of an issue as we head into the weekend. And then talking longer range, kind of through the weekend, we're going to have the leftover southerly swell, some northwest swell mix, steeper, not a whole lot, but worth keeping an eye on if the winds do cooperate at all. It's going to be a dynamic forecast as we move through the weekend and early next week, as that next area of low pressure looks to drop down the west coast. One thing there, probably going to set up some steeper northwest swell mix, which would be good for the beach breaks, but it looks like conditions are pretty shot on Monday. It looks like onshore northwest winds in the morning, and then could get pretty breezy through the day. Well, at least onshore westerly flow in the morning. Mm-hmm. The latest model runs, there's been a little bit of a maybe even southwest wind on some of the model runs in the morning, but overall it looks like onshore westerly flow. Monday could continue into Tuesday, and then as we move through the back half of the week, we'll potentially see a window of offshore flow set up. So we have that next southern hemisphere swell coming, have a storm system just wrapping up in the South Pacific. Now, pretty good numbers out of that. Had a actually pretty respectable ASCAP pass, or satellite derived wind field observations.
Nice explanation.
With a couple of flags in there. So we always look for the flags because that's 50 knot winds, 50 knot wind barbs. So great to see. Aimed pretty well at us. And 35 to 40 foot seas measured by satellite in that storm system as well. So another respectable early season swell that'll pick up through the day Monday, top out as we head into the middle of next week. So
St. Patty's Day swell.
St. Patty's Day swell. Yeah. There you go. Well, you're not surfing.
I don't know. I've got an Irish wife, so I have to go to the bar apparently with her dad.
Twist my arm.
I know. Okay, there were a couple things I wanted to get touch back on. So over the next few days, we've got this, really pretty unstable weather situation in place with this area low pressure that's going to be in the vicinity, very close, either just offshore over us. And a lot of times what we've seen there too is winds tend to really swirl around a lot. So you might see a morning that ends up being blown out, but it cleans up in the afternoon. And things change pretty quickly during these periods of unstable conditions and for brief periods of time too. So if you have the flexibility in your schedule and can keep an eye on the cams.
What does that even mean? The flexibility in your schedule?
Yeah, I know. For those of you that are like under 25 and maybe have like a night job or something like that, then you could probably just watch the cams and go out and surf. But you're probably just going out and surfing whenever you want anyway.
Watch the cams. Keep a close eye on the high resolution wind models. We have those high hourly winds. You head to one of the regional forecast page, you'll see a little tab that says charts. You click on that in the left-hand bar halfway down. We have the SoCal regional high-res winds. That would be my personal favorite to take a look at. It's hourly high-resolution winds for the Southern California Bight. So it really gives you a good look at kind of what the winds are going to be doing pretty much all day for days 1 through 3. So it's a really great tool as we move into those kind of shorter windows when you're really trying to make decisions on where to surf. It gives you a great idea of what the winds are going to look like.
Yeah.
Not always perfect, but
does a really nice job, with really kind of small scale features too. Like that's what we're getting into the spring months now too, which means south wind eddies a lot for Orange County, San Diego. And I've found, as I know you have, Schaler, that those higher resolution models tend to do a much better job kind of resolving that eddy and how strong those southerly winds might be versus the GFS model, which is the global forecast system model, which is a much less or a much coarser resolution model.
What do you mean coarse?
By coarse, I mean it's taking large chunks of the globe. It's a global model, so it's not taking these small little areas and can't refine terrain and all sorts of fun things like that. So where the global model might show light variable winds on a south wind day or a south eddy day, that high resolution model might be showing south wind to 8 knots. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that like a miss of 8 knots is not that big a deal unless you're surfing in Orange County.
Most people really don't care.
Yeah.
You run of the mill
you probably
person.
Don't. You don't surf hanging out unless you're a surfer. Like
8 knots of south wind or 3 knots of south wind, you could really give to.
Yeah.
And for us, it make or break.
Yeah.
I mean, south winds at 8 knots and it's just an absolute mess. And south winds at 3 knots and you're kind of having fun. But best bets for really the next week, if you're looking at Santa Barbara Ventura, across the board in Southern California, if you're in Santa Barbara early next week with that shot of shorter period northwest swell mix, we'll be watching as that storm system drops into the region. Probably be a Tuesday kind of deal, it looks like. Might not be the cleanest, but it looks like the best shot, at least somewhat sizable surf, at least over the waist high mark for most areas. If you're in Ventura, North LA, be really capitalize on the next couple of days, Wednesday into Thursday at those summer focal points, and then keep an eye on the middle of next week as we see that next storm system exit the region, have that nice southern hemisphere swell running. Should be a pretty fun swell for a lot of spots. The South Bay, probably going to be best tomorrow, and then early next week on that wind swell event.
Tomorrow being Wednesday.
Yep. Correct. I've just a modest mix of swells running. South Bay, traditionally not great on southern hemisphere swell, but there will be a little bit getting in with a longer period. And we'll also have some leftover southerly wind swell, and that little bit of westerly swell mix. And then again, Orange County, San Diego, really the best bets the next couple of days, although San Diego starting to look a little bit dicey for Thursday morning.
The South Bay is, you think about when the South Bay is good, it's like when everywhere else is horrible. And then when everywhere else is good, like the South Bay is generally horrible. Yeah.
It's been a kind of the ticket, at least a number of times this winter. We've had these storm systems drop in and it's cranking southeast winds out in front of the office and pretty bad, but it's pretty good there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of funny a couple of spots down in San Diego like that too. All right. One last thing before we wrap up here on Southern California was for those that may be following the charts or even our long range models or 17-day forecast, did look like there was at least a glimmer of hope for some northwest swell before we call this season a wrap. And nothing didn't look major to me, but it looked like it was kind of, it was pretty north. But what are we thinking for size and timing on that? Early on, obviously, but any thoughts on that right now?
We'll see how the next couple of model runs look. At long range, this time of year, your shoulder seasons. So it's, as you get past kind of 5 days, you start to take everything with a grain of salt. There's that nice shot of north swell for Hawaii. That's not really going to do anything for us here just because of the orientation of the fetch. Long range, though, we could see at least a more respectable storm move across the Gulf of Alaska and drop down a little bit further offshore than we've seen. But that was looking pretty long range for me, like towards the end of the dashboards. And for westerly swells, the end of the dashboards, 17 days out is
like what is it, the 23rd or so? Something like that?
Yeah, it's a ways out there. I mean, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. We'll see how it does over the next few model runs. Hopefully we get at least a little bit of something out of it, because it does look like the Southern Hemisphere is going to stay active. So long range of the Southern Hemisphere, we're going to continue to see the Central through Southeastern Pacific stay pretty active, it looks like. And especially as we move into next week, we could see another active phase in the tropics, the Southwest Pacific, Australian tropics. Could get on another little run. We could see a few storm systems develop down there. Tropical cyclones, as they make their way into the mid latitudes, are always a great way to get things going, especially early in the season in terms of storm activity. So that'll be something to really watch in the longer range, as we could see another few nice pulses of Southern Hemisphere swell before the month is done, and especially as we move into early April.
Awesome. All right. Well, before we wrap up SoCal here, any closing argument statements that you'd like to make? Maybe you won't be with us next week because you might be enjoying the new family member. Who knows? Hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, it's not quite that early, but
we'll see. We got at least a little bit more time, so hopefully it's not that soon. Yeah. But I guess if that happens, party on. Let's do this.
Giddy up. All right. Thanks, Schaler. We're talking to you next week. We've reached the Northern California segment, and for the Northern California segment, we're bringing on the Grom. We've got Keaton Browning. Keaton, you are our primary Central and Northern California forecaster. So I'm going to grill you a little bit. Like I grilled Schaler. I kind of let John off the hook, but I gave him some grief because he talks for too long sometimes. Not that any of us know it, but he likes to cover all his bases. John is very, very thorough,
he's a grown-up Grom.
Yeah. He's a I don't know if he's that grown up. But. Okay, so let's just get down to brass tacks here. Yeah. What are the days to target this week for the Bay Area, for Santa Cruz, and then for the Central Coast?
Yeah, as we've probably mentioned, we've had a really active pattern along the California coastline here, and although March is typically not known for one of the more popular months to go surf in Northern California, it's been pretty fun the last couple of days with light wind and just a combination of swells. And we're going to continue to see that through the next couple of days. So for your days to target, we're definitely going to take advantage of Wednesday and Thursday, because it does look like we are going to have a little bit of suspect conditions through the upcoming weekend. So
suspect meaning onshore wind, meaning what are we talking here?
Yes, exactly. Okay. It looks like we're going to have a couple more storms drop along the coastline. Models have been struggling over the past couple of days with the exact track of those, whether it's just offshore or if it's coming down through the state. So a lot of uncertainty with winds right now, starting around Saturday and through the early part of next week. But for the next couple of days, we do have a variety of swell out in the water, starting out with just some mid to longer period west-northwest swell, and then also some shorter period northwest swell mix as well. And then we do have that longer but steep south swell building in through Wednesday and topping out into Thursday and Friday. So heaps of swell out in the water. Nothing significant by any means, just really fun size, great for your novice, beginner type of level surfer. We're going to continue to see that through the next couple of days. So like I said, with these light winds, it's really optimal for a lot of people to get out in the water. And you're going to see that on the cameras. There's going to be a lot of humans out in the next couple of days.
Yeah, it looked like today looked like a really great day for the Santa Cruz region. Looked super fun, looked really clean up around the Bay Area, Ocean Beach, which is, as you mentioned, not traditionally known for having glassy conditions in March, but we are certainly seeing them right now, and it looks like that'll be the case for the next couple of days. Give us a little bit of lowdown. Schaler and I talked about this area low pressure that's impacting Southern California. It's kind of meandering around. It's far enough south, though, that it looks like that'll actually help to set up light winds and or even potential for offshore winds at times, right?
Yep, that is definitely correct. The farther south those storms push, we tend to see offshore, like easterly offshore flow.
Kind of the backside of it.
The backside of the storm through especially San Luis Obispo County and even up into San Francisco at times as well. It's something that a lot of people look at and they're like, oh, it looks like we're going to get rain. But really, this system really hasn't been a rain event for Northern California. We are seeing some scattered showers through San Luis Obispo County this afternoon, and that will continue through tomorrow. But for the most part, a dry event That will change for the upcoming weekend. It looks like we'll have a bit more rain and, like I said, onshore flow for the weekend. So what we've been talking about, really take advantage of these next couple of days because it's about to feel more like spring for the upcoming weekend.
Okay. One thing I know, I'm going to call you out a little bit. One thing I noticed on our San Francisco regional forecast, which for those of you familiar and or not familiar, our San Francisco regional forecast breaks down basically what you're going to see at kind of like Ocean Beach. And we give a 7-day forecast with boxes that show surf heights and surf quality conditions for both the morning and the afternoon hours. And in this case, it's basically for Ocean Beach.
Correct.
For other areas, it's kind of like one of the better spots in that particular region. What I did notice is that we've got very good conditions for tomorrow morning, which is Wednesday morning. One thing I did notice, or another thing I did notice, I should say, is that the wind forecast, which is provided by the GFS, or in this case, actually the NAM model, North American Mesoscale. It's kind of a higher resolution model, is showing kind of light onshore wind for tomorrow morning and in the mornings for the next couple of days. Is that something? Are you planning to change your forecast a little bit because you're seeing some onshore wind, or are we thinking that the model in this case is maybe off a little bit, and we think the conditions are going to be better than what that's saying right now?
Exactly. Over just keeping on track of the models over the past couple of days, it seems like the run of the gamut of the models are just trending to more just a light variable flow throughout the first couple hours of the morning, which really results in glassy conditions up and down the coastline for a lot of places. We saw it with Santa Cruz, like you mentioned today, even spots in San Francisco. There could be a chance that we could see one area have a light onshore flow for, an hour or two, and then kind of lighten up once again through the middle part of the morning. And that kind of seems like to be the picture. And, models usually typically struggle on this type of stuff. And just looking over the spread of models over the past few days and each model run, it definitely seems like our Lola spot model is a bit off. So that's why I'm giving it the fair to good, as well as just with the combination of swells and at the size of what they're at right now. It's just really ideal for a lot of people. A lot of people aren't looking for, pumping overhead surf. They're looking for more of that chest to head high range type of waves. And, it's something that we put into our quality for making a forecast.
Cool. So, all right. So to recap real quick, best days to surf, really, whether Santa Cruz, whether Central Coast, whether it's the Bay Area, looking at the next 2 days, Wednesday, Thursday, possibly into Friday, and then things really probably starting to break down by this weekend. If we start to look further out, what do we got on the radar? Do we have any northwest swells of significance out there? Do we, starting to see some activity in the Southern Hemisphere too? What are we expecting out of that? And as a follow-up to that Southern Hemisphere question, any of the swell angles that are coming up out of the Southern Hemisphere, is that a good or bad thing for Northern and Central California? Yeah,
I think first and foremost, the one we are going to see building in tomorrow and into Thursday and Friday, it is rather steep, like we've mentioned in our forecast over the past couple of days. And typically that isn't a good news thing for Northern California and Central.
By steep, what do you mean?
Steep, we mean generally when you see a swell or a storm develop in the southeastern Pacific, even in the central Pacific at times, there's just the direction on that. We're looking more for that 200 to 220 directional spread instead of 175 to 195. So hot spots in Santa Cruz will definitely have some waves, but spots through San Francisco, most of the Central Coast, there are a number of spots that do like the longer period, which we are going to see with this.
We're not allowed to talk about those, though.
But yeah, we need to keep that a little on the down low. But if you are looking for some of that Southern Hemisphere swell north of Morro Bay, like through Cambria and a couple of zones up towards Big Sur, we'll have a few waves if you're looking to get some of that.
The hate mail's coming in already, dude. I can already feel it.
But
we're just going to edit that part of the podcast.
But you know what? We're going to see a similar type of swell for next week as well. Another storm that's developing over the last couple of days through the southeastern Pacific. And again, just very steep, inconsistent, lowly on those sets when they do show. So nothing really fruitful for Northern and Central California.
Widespread. I think. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But, the Southern Hemisphere is starting to stir a bit through March, which is always a good sign. As of course, as we all know, the further we move through the spring and getting into summer, there's more potential for us, especially if those storms are more around New Zealand. That's kind of our swell maker. So just right now, nothing special, just modest and steep and very selective for a lot of breaks. But yeah.
North Pacific? Anything?
North Pacific
before things I mean, we're getting to the basically the end of the season here. After March, it gets pretty bleak. Do we have anything in the next couple of weeks that we're at least watching?
Yes, there is a couple of things we are watching. With the recent pattern change we've had along the coastline here, it's really suppressed storm activity through the central North Pacific. But models have been spinning up over the past couple of days, an uptick in storm activity around the northwestern rim of the Pacific, with a chance of those to track easterly and potentially send us some longer period west-northwest swell to northwest swell around the back third of the month. Something to keep an eye on, not looking like a significant swell event by any means, but something potentially larger with the longer period could be really fun. But as for next week, pretty grim for the most part. It looks like we're going to see just shorter period northwest swell mix through Monday, Tuesday. Wind's still a little suspect around then, but it looks like we'll have favorable wind through the middle part of next week and just smaller swell mix, about a notch smaller than what we're seeing kind of now. So, another good week if you're at that beginner level and you're surfing.
Cool. Anything else? Are we missing anything that we should we touch on? I mean, should we send people to those secret spots again? Should we mention that again? No.
No, we'll take that out.
All right. I can't remember. Do you have a Surfline Instagram or Twitter handle?
I do not at the moment. I do go by Keaton Browning on Instagram, but I do not have a Surfline.
Oh, yeah, we gotta change that. But you do a lot of posting on our main channel, especially a lot of the forecast related content. Okay, as again, just a reminder that these forecasts can and do change, especially when we're these dynamic patterns. So we encourage everyone to have a look at the site, to take a look at the premium analysis and the regional forecast for San Francisco, Pacifica area. We've got Santa Cruz. We've got the Central Coast, San Luis Obispo County. If you are not already a premium member, you can also go to surfline.com/Forerunners podcast. You can get a free 15-day trial there. So Keaton, thanks a bunch, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, we're joined by John Warren now. John, you are our primary Hawaii surf forecaster, and I've got some questions for you. Like I said, I just mentioned I'm gonna grill you a little bit today, and so I'm gonna put your feet to the fire just a little bit. We're gonna play a little game right now, and I want either 1 or 2 word answers. All right, you think you can go with that?
That's gonna be tough. Okay.
All right. Starting with Northern Shores, we're looking at Hawaii. What day and or time would be the best to surf on the North Shore if you're looking for head-high waves and clean conditions in the next couple of days?
All right. Well, in the next couple of days, I would have to say, well, right now actually looks pretty fun out there on the North Shore. So if you have a chance to get out of work or whatever early or not already there, check out the North Shores today. Fun surf at a lot of the small wave standouts like Rocky Point. But look for Wednesday morning to be the best conditions over just basically the next couple of days here. We're going to have clean conditions early as this front moves in, but watch for conditions to deteriorate throughout the day. But yeah, early Wednesday morning, the rest of today, early Wednesday morning, and then we got better stuff stacking up for the longer range.
I'm going to say that was about 150 more words than one word right there.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll jump back into the Wednesday in just a second. Okay, if you're looking for bigger surf on the North Shore or northerly shores in general, if you're looking for bigger surf, cleaner, with still clean conditions, what are your days going to be then? If say overhead to well overhead.
Friday and Saturday.
Hey, there we go. You nailed it right there. Okay, we're looking to town. I know there's not a whole lot going on in town right now. We're still pretty early season, obviously. We tend to see larger swells really as we move, from April all the way through August. So there's not a lot going on right now in town. But if there was one day or the other that you'd target a surf in town or on the southern shores of the Hawaiian Islands, what day would that be?
Monday and Tuesday.
All right, dude, you're nailing, you're acing the test right now. And then how about any wild cards? For example, looks like we're going to have periods of light wind or even Kona wind, meaning southwest to west wind. And any opportunities to get over to the windward sides or the east sides of the islands here in the next couple of days that you see?
Yeah, certainly. That would be windward shores, the east exposures later Thursday. Keep your eye on it. That front sitting offshore, the wind's turning more westerly, and a building north-northwest swell. So the spots that pick up that north-northwest wrap, keep those in mind. And then really just watch the conditions over the weekend. Winds are going to be variable and light. So for the most part, a lot of areas are going to see pretty good conditions with this front just sitting to the north of Hawaii.
Cool. So the other one I was looking at too is maybe some potential for tomorrow, which would be Wednesday. Look like the wind switching through the afternoon, going offshore on those windward shores. It looks like just enough trade swell to be fun, like nothing major, but it looks like it could be kind of fun on Wednesday too. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely fun. I was just trying to pick out what might be better, and that's on the menu for later this week. But yeah, tomorrow afternoon, the winds turn westerly, so conditions kind of fall apart for northern exposures, but eastern exposures still, like you were just saying, nice little blend of trade swell and some northeast swell from a low that's sitting off California. So yeah, should be pretty fun over there too tomorrow afternoon.
Awesome. All right, so let's take a step back and a bit deeper dive into just the surf over the next couple of days. So you mentioned we've got some waves coming up for tomorrow for northern shores. We've got that northwest swell that should be fun size and should be good for those people that that aren't looking for necessarily huge surf, just kind of fun size surf. You did mention that we're going to have wind switching. What's the cause of that wind switching around and really both tomorrow and for the rest of the week?
Okay, that's supposed to be in 2 words.
No, we can go a little deeper now, dude.
All right. So, so we have this front that's sweeping into the islands tonight and into tomorrow. It's going to stall there. So the main factors off of that thing are conditions. They're going to be switching up from day to day, as well as this solid northerly swell that's lining up for what we're just saying over Friday and the weekend. But yeah, for tomorrow, that front's going to be impacting the islands. Look for early tomorrow morning to offer the best conditions for those northern shores for at least, right now, just focusing on Oahu. Things will happen a little sooner for the Kauai, so they may not see that window of clean conditions early tomorrow. It might turn west before first light. So starting to blow out a lot of spots there. Not really blowing it out. It's not going to be too strong, but certainly not a favorable wind, more westerly and moderate in strength for Kauai. So better though for Oahu and Maui's north-facing shores, and the window for the north shore of Oahu looks to be more so early. So if you have a chance to get out there and score some of that, what we like to call a fun size west-northwest swell that we're seeing, that's been filling in today, sets up around the head high range. The best window will be early. So get it early, then later. As those winds will soon, just like it's turning west for Kauai, will eventually turn west for the North Shore, and that's not a great wind direction. It's straight on shore. So yeah, early tomorrow morning, sooner the better, basically.
Cool. Yeah, one of the things I've noticed over the years from traveling over to Hawaii and doing Hawaii forecasts, whether it's with Triple Crown or whatever, I'm sure you probably noticed the same thing. Is it does seem like the models tend to bring in that onshore flow a little bit earlier than often occurs. When you get in these kind of weak pressure gradients like we're going to see the next couple of days, you get more of that land breeze effect in the morning. So it does seem like a lot of times you'll get, even if the models are saying like southwest or west wind early on, a lot of times you'll get that, hour or 2 or 3 hours of much more favorable southeast or southeast wind for the North Shores, and just kind of like that land breeze in general for all the sides. And one of my favorite tools to look at when trying to piece together that wind forecast is we've got a high resolution wind model on Surfline. You can find it from any forecast page or any cam page too. You go to charts and then look for that high res wind model link on the left hand side when you bring that chart drop down. That's definitely one of my favorite tools to use. Okay, going into that second half of the week then, John, we've got a much larger swell looking like it's going to line up second half of the weekend into the weekend. We've been chatting about this a bunch just in the office and our forecaster Slack channel too. We go back and forth a lot on these swells as we see them start to develop. And one thing that we both noticed is at least at this point, and we'll see as our Lola model starts to catch up a little bit, we see the most recent runs. One thing that we noticed, that it does look like the size and the timing are probably a little bit off on that swell. It looks like at this point, we'd see larger surf earlier than what our model indicates. Is that kind of what you're still feeling? And why do you think that's so?
Yeah. So basically, the Lola model that we have loved through all these years, it's not always perfect. That's why we have a job, right? But it has been it is the way things are looking right now on the charts. The way this low is setting up, and the way it's already actually like performing. The latest satellite passes over that storm are already showing 30, 35 knots, and it's intensifying further. We're expecting the wind speeds to get up to 40 to 50 knots actually over like the next 12 hours or so, if not sooner. So by looking at how the storm is behaving and what's projected on the charts of this thing, we feel that the Lola model is a little under on not just size, but more so with the period. We're looking at this spell to fill in over Thursday with more of a rapid build over the second half of Thursday, and a peak on Friday. So right now the Lola model is showing about 8 feet at 11 seconds. I'm feeling more around 8 feet at like 14 to 15 seconds.
So what's that translate to for surf then? For those that are listening that may not be Surfline forecasters.
Yeah. So, 8 feet, 11 seconds, the way it's showing right now on the models would be surf anywhere in that, 8 to 10 foot range on the face, occasional bigger. But 8 feet at 14, 15 seconds would be well overhead for many spots across the northern exposures. Standouts easily, double overhead plus, and select breaks that really favor that mid-period, more north-angled swell, pushing up the triple overhead. So, much definitely considerably more size due to that swell period, as the reefs there really like to focus and amplify that energy. It's coming out of that, the raw open ocean swells just coming straight in from this storm. Like I said, it's just sitting just north of the islands, pretty close too. So consistency should be really good, solid surf. So Friday right now is definitely looking stronger than what the models are suggesting right now.
Well, yeah, I noticed there were a couple things that I noticed when I was looking at another really cool tool that I like to use a lot, and I think our forecast team in general uses every day, probably the most, or at least one of the most important tools in our tool chest, and one that our founder Sean Collins used to always really stress that we look at were the fetch charts, directed fetch charts. And again, you can find that if you go to a Surfline report or forecast page for Hawaii. Hover over that chart section at the top of the page, you'll get a drop-down menu and hit advanced charts and then go to directed fetch charts. But that'll actually highlight the wind that's pointed at your area of interest. In this case, it's Hawaii. You can see kind of where the storm, the low pressure area and the high pressure area are setting up. The thing that really caught my eye about this particular setup for later this week is, or two things actually. We've got that kind of that backing high pressure is what we call it, on the storm's western flank, which is really pretty strong. Like it could be about 1040 millibars. One of the things we really like to see when we see storm developing and a fetch developing with wind aimed at, whether it's Hawaii or wherever it happens to be, you've got strong high pressure that's backing that storm. That tends to lead to more consistent wind. It tends to lead to even stronger wind, especially as compared to what the models might be saying. So in this instance, I think there's a really good chance that this swell will exceed model guidance, like you said, not only for, potentially for swell size, deep water swell size, but especially for swell period right now, which can have a, really profound impact on the size of the surf. And the other thing that kind of caught my eye about that whole fetch setup was that storm looks like it just kind of sits in place. Basically, it maybe moves slightly away from Hawaii, which isn't, that's not great. You'd rather have the storm move toward your area of interest to enhance size and consistency. But right now, it looks like that storm almost stays in place with that strong high pressure the whole time, and looks like pretty solid north-northwest swell. And that's the other interesting thing about the swell is the direction. Got a lot of north in it, so And some of your kind of normal spot, quote unquote normal spots, maybe like Pipeline, aren't going to necessarily be that good. Although Pipe probably wouldn't be that good anyway with all the sand that's there, as you pointed out, and some of the screen grabs in the last couple of days. But some of the other spots are really like that northerly swell. Should be kind of firing, huh?
Yeah. What's like I was saying when we're trying to rap about those eastern shores, what's also nice about the more north angled is that more of that swell energy will get over to those exposures as well. So when the winds do go more westerly, over Friday and the weekend, look for those eastern shores to be pulling in more energy than they would on, say, a west northwest. Yeah, and just as like you're pointing out, it is we had that strong high sitting to the west of that low. That low is also only 1,200 miles away. So not only is it sitting there with strong high pressure support, but it's really close and looks to sit there for at least a day. So when you see those things, that's what we like to see. Something really close. It's going to send a fairly consistent, solid northwest swell. That'll be a great angle. Get into some of those spots that would feel more shadowing on the more westerly swells that we traditionally see throughout the season, such as some of the spots over on Maui that are shadowed by Molokai. Look for those spots to turn on. But
what spot are you referring to right now, John?
I'm not going to drop any names on spots. But those that are in the know, I'm sure are frothing right now. And take note, I haven't updated those Maui forecast boxes just yet. So look for the update on those to come shortly today to reflect numbers of what we're seeing. But also just something to keep in mind when we do those forecast boxes for North Maui. Those are more focused on the Ho'okipa area. So just keep that in mind as other spots along the coast will vary in size. But so just back to that storm when it's sitting out there. One thing that we also have, one of the things that shifted in our favor with this thing is before the models were showing this storm to slide a little bit more to the east and allowing that strong high that we were just talking about to move a little further east as well. So before the models were showing strong northerly winds to move into the Hawaiian Islands on Friday with the arrival of that swell, which obviously wouldn't bode well for all the north exposures. But now that low is kind of just parked there and even retrograding back a little bit to the west. So it's going to allow that trough that's sitting over the islands to kind of just hang there. So now we're looking at lighter winds and even light offshore winds in the mornings. So the conditions have improved for us drastically over the past few days of what we're going to see with this swell event for Friday and the weekend. So,
are you fairly confident that we're going to see favorable winds for the end of the week?
Yes. Friday is still a little not perfect. We're looking at northeasterly winds, but on the lighter side, like less than 10 knots. But then on Saturday, the winds veer more easterly and even get really light. So a lot of like the leeward areas, such as the north shore of Oahu, which faces more to the west than northerly, will actually see calm, light, variable offshore winds in the morning before maybe a afternoon sea breeze. But things are looking really good. Better for Saturday than I would say on Friday for most of the north exposures, and still lots of swell left in the water on Saturday as that storm again as that low just sits there over the next 24 hours or so. It's going to keep that swell holding up fairly steady through Saturday before it starts to ease over Sunday and into next week.
Awesome. Okay, before we pivot into our final segment of this podcast, which is going to be a breakdown of the most recent good to epic picture featuring restaurants in Fiji, give us a real quick rundown of long range perspectives for northern shores. We got a pretty decent looking northwest swell lining up longer range, don't we?
Sorry, for the Hawaiian Islands. Sorry,
Hawaiian Islands. Yeah.
Yeah, I spaced there. I thought you were referring to Fiji for a second. No,
Don't jump the gun here, John. Let's settle down. Bring it back to what? Come on.
All right. So yeah, for the longer range, March got off to a pretty bad start. The first 1/3 of the month has been slow, and now we have this flare up that we've been ranting and raving about here over the past 15 minutes. But then things kind of dip back down again.
Okay, let's get back. Let's two words here. Let's get back to 2 words.
When's
that fall coming? What, how big does it look right now?
There is another pulse for around next weekend. But it's a little too far out to say just how big that thing's going to be. But it looks promising to be at least a medium-sized swell by next weekend. So
perfect. Okay. So before we get into this next segment, be sure to follow the North and South Shore premium analysis. You can also, if you're on the outer islands, we've got North Kauai, North Maui, and the Kona Coast. You can follow the premium analysis or regional forecast for any of those spots. If any changes occur after we've listened to the podcast, you'll see them there first. You can also follow John, who is our primary Hawaiian forecaster, on both Twitter and Instagram. He is at JWarren Surfline. And again, if you are looking for any further information, you're not a premium member already, you can go to surfline.com/Forerunners podcast. You can sign up for a free 15-day trial and get the latest information there. All right, we'll pivot now. Wanted to close this week's podcast with a little breakdown of the most recent picture featured in our Good to Epic series on Surfline. If you've got your phone on you right now, you can look at the Surfline main Instagram channel. I think it's the photo that was like 6 or 7 posts back. You can also, if you're at a laptop or something like that, you can search for Surfline Good to Epic, and that photo should come up. So this was a shot of restaurants, which is in Fiji, on the island of Tabarua in Fiji, from just a few days ago. I think it was March 4th or something like that. And John, you actually did what we call a swell signature for this event, where you broke down the actual storm that caused this surf. Give us a little breakdown of what happened. It looked like basically like glassy, probably head high, maybe a little bit overhead surf, was from a drone. So it's a little bit tough to tell, but just this incredible photo of restaurants.
Yeah, that was March 4th, Fijian time, in the evening. And that photo, like you just said, is of restaurants, which restaurants being more tucked around the corner, is not as big. So if those are wondering how big Cloudbreak was, it was at least twice that size. From what I get word from Scott Weiner over there, sent a report that it was pumping over there. You just couldn't get over there to get a photo. But definitely been a good run, or let's just say, a good low season for Fiji this year. It almost seemed like it never turned off, and there's been really good pulses throughout what would be the slower months through the year. And they kind of have showed in spurts of about 3 or 4 pulses at a time before it takes a break. And the run of swell we saw during that week of March 4th was the same exact thing. There was a series of 3 lows that moved out from under Tasmania, each sending up a pulse. So just back-to-back southwest pulses that moved in throughout that week. So that photo of that swell that moved in on March 4th was just one of 3. It was the middle one. There was one that hit in the beginning of that week. That was midweek one, and then one that moved in by the weekend. Nothing XL, nothing really crazy, but just good solid swell that have been showing throughout this low season with surf basically in that head high to double overhead range, depending on if you're going to Cloudbreak or if you're going to restaurants or the other spots in the area. So basically what every normal surfer would want, and just really good conditions too. Throughout that week, the trade winds have been veering from east in the morning to more southerly in the afternoon. And just some spot info on those breaks. Cloudbreak likes that more easterly wind, and then restaurants likes that more southerly wind. So you could feasibly hit up a session at Cloudbreak in the morning and then hit up restaurants in the afternoon and evening and score great waves all day long.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me about this particular swell is as you mentioned, it was good at both restaurants and Cloudbreak, and that's not always necessarily the case. I mean, you can have days, for example, where it's absolutely pumping at Cloudbreak, talking double to triple overhead, and restaurants is almost barely rideable when you're looking at really long period swells. And that's probably what happened on the front end of this swell, is my guess. That storm was really deep down in the Southern Ocean, just pushing up towards the Tasman Sea. And so you get, longer period forerunners that fill in at the beginning of the swell. And that's where Cloudbreak's really going to shine, is on that long period energy, and it kind of steals some of the energy away from restaurants. Like you mentioned, a restaurant's kind of more tucked away. It actually faces north. So by the time the waves are wrapping in, and you're kicking out in the boat channel there, they're wrapping about 180 degrees from that initial approach angle. So a lot of times you get, Cloudbreak will be picking up all day one day, probably, say peak that afternoon or that evening. And then the next day is when, restaurants will really be turning on, or Cloudbreak's peaking in the morning with long period energy. As soon as that swell period starts to come down a little bit and drops below 16 seconds is when restaurants really turns on. And so that's likely what happened here. It seems, just from given that storm. And then a lot of times, you get kind of either like that light southerly wind or light variable winds, and all the spots turn on when it starts to do kind of that light variable wind. You've got all these different spots all around the zone, and Cloudbreak and restaurants obviously get the most kind of press and the most notoriety, but there's some other really good waves around there too. If you're looking at the photo right now, kind of in the background, you can see Namotu, and then there's some boats kind of off Namotu in there at a spot called Swimming Pools, which is this ultra fun right-hander that's actually really good on west winds, offshore and west winds, but it'll be clean in those light variable flows too. And Swimming Pools tends to like that slightly shorter period swell as well. So it's probably pretty fun that afternoon or that evening as the sun was setting down. So overall, good to Epic Day. I wish I had been there, and I wish I was going here in the next few days sometime, because it sounds like we've got more swell lining up.
But you have been fortunate enough to have visited those islands before. I'm jealous.
I have, yeah. Been for the event a few times now. I've had the pleasure of sleeping in a tent on the island, which actually was kind of cool. They dialed me in it was like on a full platform, this tent, and because I was there during the event, there's way more people than would normally be there. So I was like one of the only people on the islands that actually had my own, quote unquote room. It was a tent, and there were some snakes around, but it wasn't too bad.
That's right. I mean, you're in sitting there like in paradise. Some would probably even say, man, I'll just sleep just bare on the ground if it means being in Fiji. But
I would do it, man. Yeah, if it came down to that. All right, we're going to wrap it up now. Thanks, John, for joining us. We'll talk to you next Tuesday when our next edition of Forerunners, the Surfline podcast, drops. Again, as a reminder, our Pacific version of this podcast drops every Tuesday, and our Atlantic podcast drops every Wednesday. So we'll see you next week.
All righty. Aloha.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of Forerunners, the Surfline podcast dedicated to helping you score waves. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Just hit that red button below or the Surfline logo in the bottom right and let us know what you think in the comments section below as well. Might even answer back in a future podcast. For more detailed information on the surf at your local break, be sure to head to surfline.com for the full premium forecast analysis. And if you're not yet a premium member, well, you can click on the icon in the bottom left for a free 15-day trial of Surfline Premium that includes over 700 ad-free HD cams from around the globe, our famous 7-day colored forecast boxes, and our expert premium forecast analysis, so you know before you go. We'll see you out in the water.